Hey guys, you're probably here because you want to know all about the FODMAP diet. What is the FODMAP diet? And are there any benefits associated with the FODMAP diet? Well, I'm going to answer that question along with many other different questions in this week's Responding to Your Comments, where we look at fun questions, we look at science-based questions, but most importantly, we always look at the evidence. Update 20. Dear Abraham, please can you do a video on the FODMAP diet? I've been recommended it by my GP. Update 20. Thank you for your comment. This is from the How to Get Rid of Bloating video, which I did a while back, and this is a great comment. I'm going to do my best to give you all the information I possibly can, so let's begin. So the FODMAP diet is a 3-stage diet for patients with IBS. It limits certain types of carbohydrates from your diet. Now you're probably wondering, what does FODMAP stand for? Well, fermentable, Oligo-saccharides, Di-saccharides, Monosaccharides, and Polyols. That's what it stands for. Now let's move on to the science behind the FODMAP diet. So, FODMAP carbohydrates pass through your small intestine, where they're not absorbed, into your colon. Once they're in the colon, bacteria in there break this down. Now when they're breaking this down, it leads to all kinds of IBS type symptoms, such as bloating, such as reflux, such as excessive wind, such as a gurgling tummy. So it's causing all these different symptoms. Now that was a very basic explanation of how the FODMAP diet works, but I hope it gives you that basic understanding of how the FODMAP diet can actually potentially help patients with IBS and their symptoms. But don't worry, I'm not going to tell you to stop every single carbohydrate. I wouldn't dream of doing that. We're going to talk about what foods you can and can't eat a little later on in the video. Now it's super important to remember, before you start any diet, including the FODMAP diet, please first speak to your healthcare professional, either your dietitian or any healthcare professional. If you've already spoken to them and you've given you the thumbs up or the go ahead, then this video is the video for you. We're going to go and break down the FODMAP diet as much as I can and make it relatively easy for you to digest. See what I did there? Let's crack on. So there's lots of different FODMAP foods that you need to limit from your diet. Now the best way for me to go through this is to separate them into 4 different categories for you. This will make it a lot easier to understand. Now please remember, I am going to leave a full list in the description below for each different category as well. I'm not going to keep saying it because that gets a bit annoying, but please remember, if you want more information, look in the description below at any point in the video. So category number 1, oligosaccharides such as fructans. We need to limit these foods. For example, wheat-based bread, pasta, cabbage, beans. There's loads more too. Hopefully my editor's going to be shooting these texts everywhere as well for different types of foods that are in category 1. Let's move on to category 2. So category number 2, we have disaccharides such as lactose. So again, we need to limit these. Now this doesn't mean stop having your dairy products completely. This means go for lactose-free versions of whatever dairy products you like. That way, you're still getting your calcium intake, which is really, really important. However, please do avoid processed cheese and low-fat cheese. Okay, so the next category, category number 3, monosaccharides like fructose. Now this doesn't mean stop having fruit completely, but you do need to stop having things like honey, mangoes, sugar snaps, and fructose sweeteners. You need to avoid these. I know, mangoes are delicious. I would really struggle with that one, but you do need to avoid that one. Moving on to category number 4, polyols. You need to avoid them or limit them as much as you can. These include things like mannitol, sorbitol, xylitol. You may have seen them in sugar-free gum, sugar-free candy, and also sugar-free medicine. But please don't stop the medicine without speaking to your healthcare professional first. If you do see it, speak to them. There might be versions that don't have these in them. Also, stoned fruit, you need to avoid these as well, such as apricot and plums, any stoned fruit really. So I hope that was quite simple and easy to understand. Those are the 4 categories of carbohydrates that you need to avoid or limit as much as you can. But the next question is, what kind of carbs can you eat? Well, I'm going to tell you that now. Okay, so let's see what's included in the FODMAP diet. Now before we begin, please remember, like I said earlier, I'm going to leave more information in the description below on all the foods that you can have. These are very brief examples, otherwise this video is going to be super duper long. So for breakfast, you can have things like puffed rice, cornflakes, and if you love porridge, you can still have oats. You can still have rice and potatoes. It's completely fine to have. Cook them however you like it, it's fine. If you want other type of carbohydrates, you can also have buckwheat, you can have polenta, and you can have quinoa. Quinoa, delicious in a salad. And it's also spelt really funny, isn't it? Now, speaking of salads, that reminds me, fruit and vegetables are also a good source of carbohydrates and also a great source of fiber. Now, in addition to these, please remember, you need to try and avoid things like alcohol, caffeine, spicy food, fatty foods. All of these are notoriously bad for IBS symptoms. Now, in addition to these, also set aside some self-care time for yourself so you can relax and stress less and do some things that are going to help reduce your stress. I do have a video on how to reduce stress levels, so I will leave a link to it up here and in the description below. And I'll also leave a really useful NHS article on useful things that you can do to help relieve your stress levels. So I'll also leave that down there too. So you're now slowly becoming a bit of a FODMAP pro. You know what foods you can eat, you know what foods you can't eat, you know all about the different types of carbohydrates. But next, let's look at how you're going to start to introduce the FODMAP diet. We're going to do it in 3 stages, and hopefully Soph, my editor, is going to write them somewhere here or there or somewhere. Let's look into them stages. So stage number 1, restriction. This is going to take about 4 to 8 weeks for you to see results. And by results, I mean a reduction of those IBS symptoms. So it's super important when you start the diet, keep a list, keep a diary, what you're eating, what kind of symptoms you're experiencing. And then you can kind of look at that diary later on as we go through the stages. So when you're doing stage 1, the restriction, you can either cut out all 4 categories of the FODMAP diet or cut out 1 category at a time and see how you get on. Remember, keep that list, make a diary, because this is a bit of an experimental stage. Okay, so let's say you've done your 8 weeks and you've seen no improvement, you've seen no difference. At this point, you need to go back and speak to your dietitian and get some further advice. Also, please remember, look out for the following symptoms. If you get any of these kinds of symptoms, you need to stop the diet and go back to your healthcare professional as soon as possible. These include things like blood in your stools. Also, low iron levels. You might experience tiredness, extreme tiredness. This could be a sign of low iron levels. Also, any weight loss, unexpected weight loss, or a loss of appetite. And lastly, any change in your symptoms. So if you've got diarrhea or constipation, it suddenly becomes a lot worse. Any of these kinds of symptoms, you need to go straight back to your healthcare professional. I am going to leave a full list of them in the description below as well for you. So if at any point you forget them, go back there and give it a read. Okay, so let's say you've got to 8 weeks and your symptoms have improved, however, and you've got none of them red flags that we just spoke about. Now it's kind of an experimental stage, because we can't stay in stage 1 forever, limiting all those foods, because we do need certain types of foods. So this is when we start to look at reintroduction, looking at that list that we made, that diary that we made, and slowly bringing in certain foods. So as explained, this is now stage 2, which is the reintroduction stage. So what we need to do is look at that diary and bring in food slowly, what we call challenge foods. So certain foods that you think, you know what, this might be making my IBS worse, you can try challenging it. So you can try it for about 2 weeks. If it does flare up your IBS, if it makes your symptoms worse, you then know 100% you're sure that that food you need to try and avoid because it makes your IBS symptoms worse. But there might be certain foods that you're fine with and you can add them to the good list. But please remember, you can only introduce 1 challenge food at a time, because it's not going to be a fair test if you suddenly try 3-4 different foods. You're not going to know which one's actually causing the symptoms, which one's aggravating and flaring up your IBS. So 1 at a time, please. Now, the reintroduction stage is quite time consuming. So what I mean by that is, like I said earlier, 1 food at a time. But remember, before you go to the next challenge food, you need to go back to your baseline. So you need to go back to stage 1, where you're avoiding almost everything, for 3 days before trying another food. Because it's really important that you go back to your baseline when your symptoms were good and non-existent, hopefully, before you start another challenge food. And I hope that makes sense. Moving on to stage number 3, personalization. Now remember, if you're going to be avoiding all the foods that you love, this diet is going to get very boring soon, and I imagine you're just going to revert back to your old ways. This is where personalization comes in. This doesn't mean that you can't ever eat the food that you love, because there are ways around it. So in this stage, you're going to make a decision on which food you're happy to have and how much of it you can have that you can tolerate before it makes your IBS symptoms worse. You're going to make that decision slowly. It's not something you can do quickly. Also, you don't want to do it all the time, so it's kind of like a treat thing. But remember to really enjoy that meal when you have it. So don't be playing on your phone or watching TV. Really get to enjoy that food and have as much as you can that you know you can tolerate. So I guess you're now a bit of a FODMAP diet pro. You now know all about the different foods you can and can't have. You know all about how to introduce the diet in and how to slowly personalize it too. So I guess you are a FODMAP pro. So tell your friends, tell your family, tell your loved ones, tell everyone. Update 20, thank you for your comment. I hope you found this information helpful, and I hope anyone who's found this video, who has found it because they wanted to learn more about the FODMAP diet, I hope you found it helpful too. So what I will do as well is I'll leave loads more information in the description below all about the FODMAP diet and various different resources that you can check out, which I'm sure you will find very helpful. So it looks like we've run out of time again in this week's responding to your comments. If I didn't get back to your question, I'm really sorry. We are getting so many comments and so many questions these days. It's really difficult to fit them all into one episode of responding to your comments. So what I say every single week, leave another comment. If I missed your comment, please keep on leaving those comments and eventually I will get back to you. That's the end of this week's video. Always remember that you're awesome, and I will see you next week. Hey guys, thanks for watching this week's video. Make sure to click that like, follow or subscribe button now to stay up to date with new weekly videos.